Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Escafe Online. Welcome to our live session this morning. Today we're going to be making a cookie, but it's a unique cookie. There's some layering. It's kind of a composed cookie. And the name of the cookie is the Sarah Bernhardt cookie. And Sarah Bernhardt, who the cookie was named after, she was a very notable French actress and very well known for her role in Hamlet, very classic play. So this cookie was made in honor of her name, and it's pretty easy to make. There's a few components. I've got some things prepared ahead of time because it's a little time consuming, but you're going to find that once you start doing this, it's pretty easy to do. So the first component of the cookie is the macaroon base. And then we're going to be making some chocolate buttercream. We're going to be making a French buttercream today, and we haven't made that before. It's extremely rich, and some people, they make the cookie with truffle mix or ganache too, but typically it's done with a French-style buttercream, which is made with egg yolks, cocoa powder, and butter, and some boiled sugar and water. Then we're going to be whipping that together, and then we're going to be dipping these cookies after they've been frozen in some chocolate. So it's a process, and that's why I got a few things ready ahead of time. So let's go ahead and get started. You're going to like this cookie if you haven't had it before. It's very classic. It's been around for a really long time, and you can make your own variations on this. Okay, so let's talk about the buttercream. We're going to be whipping the egg yolks. But first we have to boil our water and sugar mixture until it's about 240 degrees. This takes about 20 minutes on a medium-low flame. So we're going to go ahead and get that started, and then we'll talk about the macaroon. So I've got the sugar and water over here on the stove, and I'm just going to be bringing this to a boil. And just going to be simmering for about a good 20 minutes. Okay, so what you can do I've got an oven, a thermometer here. If you don't have one, just time it about 20 minutes and you'll be okay. You'll see the mixture starting to turn a little bit in color. Don't let it get amber. Pull it off if you see that at all. But it's going to be right before the amber stage. You can kind of see it turning a different shade. But you'll be fine without an a thermometer for this. So while that's cooking, we're going to go ahead and talk about the macaroon cookie base. And does anyone have any questions on anything so far? Oh, okay, good. All right, so what I did is I made the macaroon cookie base ahead of time. And this batter in particular, I made with almond paste, sugar, egg whites, a little bit of salt, and I put a little bit of almond extract in here just to reinforce the almond flavor. You can make any macaroon cookie recipe. I'm going to check on our sugar really quick. Okay, it's starting to simmer. That kind of happened quickly, so I'll be looking at it every now and then so you don't send smoke signals. Don't want to do that. Okay, back to the macaroon cookie. Like I said, almond paste, sugar, egg white, salt, and a little vanilla extract. You can use any macaroon cookie recipe that you like. You can use the French macaroon, the one that's made with the almond flour and the confectioner sugar and the egg whites. Either one will work, whichever you like. You could even change this up a little bit and do a chocolate version, a colored version. So definitely have some fun exploring the different flavors of the Sarah Bernhardt cookie. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to pipe this macaroon cookie batter out, and we're going to pipe these about an inch in diameter. We're going to make them round, and we're going to make sure that they're about an inch apart on the cookie sheet. This way they really don't spread much, but we want to give them a little bit of space. So does anyone have any questions on the macaroon cookie? Okay, just so you know, typical almond macaroon, either made with almond paste or almond flour. And we have a question.
Sorry, what size tip do you use to pipe them out?
This chip, to be honest with you, I don't remember what size it was that I put in here. So we'll have to put it up in the chat afterwards. I'll take it out of the bag and I'll wash it for you. But I have so many, I don't remember the sizes, but I remember the shapes, that's for sure. Okay. So the tip is just a plain round tip. If you don't have this, you can use a disposable bag or a paper bag and just cut it. And as you can see, this is the size. And any size will really work. It's just what you feel comfortable with, and this is where my comfort zone is. Okay, so I see our mixture is kind of simmering away over here, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit so it doesn't get away from me. Okay, so what I do first is I always anchor down my paper. This way, when I pull my cookie up, there, the paper doesn't come with it. So what you're going to do is you're going to pipe these in circles about 1 inch. And you can also, if you're new to doing this, to make them, you know, more uniform, you can draw circles on the parchment and then turn it over and use that as a guide for piping. With cookies, I like to use the staggering effect to ensure that they're not running into one another. And I like these, the almond paste macaroons. These are my favorites because it's a little more foolproof than the macaroon that's made with the almond flour. And I'll be putting the recipe up. It's very simple, and definitely try this one, especially if you've had any problems with the French macaroon. So if there's any tails, I just kind of wipe them off here. And these are ready to go in the oven. And these are going to be baking at 350 degrees for about 12 minutes. If they don't have any color to them, you're going to want to go ahead and leave them in just a little bit longer. They're going to get a golden brown around the edges. So let's go ahead and set these aside, and we're going to go ahead and work on our buttercream. So is everyone following me okay? All right. Okay, for the buttercream, we have our sugar and water mixture boiling to 240 degrees or 242 degrees. If you don't have a thermometer, like I said, let it go for about 20 minutes. You'll be okay. And in the meantime, we're going to be whisking the egg yolks. These are going to become light and airy, and as soon as this mixture is ready, we're going to very carefully pour it into the egg yolk mixture. It's going to be quite hot. We're going to have to leave it cool off a little bit before we actually put the butter in. So these are going to become light in color. And does anyone have any questions on anything about the cookie? So once the macaroons are baked, you're going to let them cool, and then you can, you know, while you're piping your macaroon, I just want to make sure this doesn't get away from us. While you're piping your macaroon, you can go ahead and start your egg yolks. I didn't want to start them because the mixture is a little loud. But you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on that egg and water, the sugar and water mixture, so it doesn't get away from you. Okay, so these are going to become light in color. And then I have my unsalted butter at room temperature, and I have my cocoa powder. And I'm using the Dutch processed cocoa powder because it has a little bit of a deeper color. You can go ahead and use the natural cocoa powder, but for this I definitely like to use the Dutch process. And does anyone have any questions while we're waiting for a minute for our egg yolk mixture to come up? Okay, so this is going to get lighter in color. It's going to get a little bit fluffy. It usually mixes for about maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, we have a question. Yeah. Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear you. I have the mixer going.
I can't find Dutch cocoa powder in any of the stores here. So can I order it online?
You can order it online. A lot of things are available at on Amazon Prime, and a lot of students are ordering from Prime, and they have a 2-day delivery. There is a membership, but I've heard a lot of people are finding really good deals, and they're finding what they need. And a lot of the grocery stores carry the natural and the Dutch process, and you can also look for, it's sometimes a special dark too. So, but definitely you can order it online. It's extremely common, so you won't have any problems finding it online. And let me know if you need any help. I can help you do a little bit of research on that. Okay, so our egg yolk mixture is becoming nice and fluffy. We're just going to let this go a little bit longer, and then what we're going to do is we're going to be running in our sugar mixture. And please let me know if you have any questions. We're just going to let this all go for maybe another minute. It's going to be ready to go. Okay, so when we pour the sugar mixture into the egg yolks, you're going to want to turn it on a very low speed, and you're just going to run it in very carefully along the side, and you're going to be careful not to do any splashing. You may have to stop for a minute to kind of let it catch up so you don't actually cook the egg yolk too much, because it is quite hot. Okay, so our sugar mixture looks good. I'm going to go ahead and lower these egg yolks. Thank you for being so patient with the noise. And my pot isn't hot, but be careful when you're moving this around. It's extremely hot. Be careful if you have anyone in the kitchen if you're moving a pot like this around. So the mixture is on low. And what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it up one notch. Okay, what we're going to do is run the sugar and water mixture right along the side here so it mixes in slowly. It's a nice steady stream. Just take your time with this. And if you feel like it's getting a little bit of a puddle in there, then just leave it catch up for a minute. Then nextly, we're going to be adding the cocoa powder. And then we're going to let it cool, and then we are going to be adding the butter to this. So it is quite hot, but it's looking good. And just be really careful with this. You're going along the side of the bowl very carefully. You don't want to pour it like in the center near the whisk because it could splash on you. So a nice, thin, steady stream, and make sure that you have enough time when you're doing this. Allow yourself enough time, and you'll be just fine. Okay, it looks fabulous.
Chef, is the butter cold or is it room temperature?
The butter is room temperature, and that's really important in this recipe because if you add cold butter to this, it's going to separate. If by chance your kitchen is a little bit cool and your butter is a little bit colder than it usually is or than it should be, you might have a tiny bit of separation, but keep mixing it together and it'll come together for you.
Okay.
That's the nice thing about these buttercreams, the Swiss and the French buttercream. They do come together if you just let them go for a little while. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to let this mixture cool. It's pretty hot. We're going to let it cool a little bit. And please let me know if you have any questions. Kind of hot. And what you can do is you can even put like a little bowl of ice under here if you want to speed it up a little bit, but it really doesn't take that long. So what we're going to do now that it cooled a little bit, we're going to go ahead and add this cocoa powder. And I sifted it ahead of time so there aren't any lumps. And we're going to mix that in. kind of doing a little bit half at a time here so it doesn't, so we don't get any pockets of cocoa. And we'll be scraping this down too. Okay, so that's our cocoa. And we'll let these eggs cool off a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and put our butter in. So like I said, the butter is at room temperature, and you're just going to be kind of breaking it off. You're not going to want to put in a whole stick at a time. I usually break it off into about 4s, and I'll just put some gloves on and I'll take my time doing this. And does anyone have any questions on French buttercream, or have you made French buttercream before? I can already feel this cooling off a little bit. So the French buttercream is quite a bit different than the Swiss buttercream. We made the Swiss buttercream before using the egg whites, and we added our sugar and our butter, and the French buttercream is always going to have the egg yolk in it. It's so much richer. It's great for filling torts. It has a super nice flavor, and like I said, it is rich. So it's perfect for filling these cookies. And some people also do fill the cookie with a ganache or a filling that's pretty similar to this. I like to use the French buttercream because it holds up well and pipes well on the cookie too. Okay, so this is cooling off. I can feel the bowl. It's not quite as hot as it was. We're going to let it go a little bit longer. It's a little warm in here, so it's taking a little bit longer. But does anyone have any questions, or has anyone made the Sarah Bernhardt cookie before? Oh, okay. So when it comes to the macaroon cookie base, you're going to always want to stick with the macaroon. But you can make it in different flavors. You can even color it like maybe a pretty pink color. You can add some cocoa to it to make a nice chocolate macaroon, or some coffee powder for a mocha flavored macaroon. And as far as buttercream, we've made buttercream before, and we've made mousses and custards and whipped creams, and you can really flavor your buttercream with a lot of different things, and any extract will work. You can use some liqueurs, but be careful not too much. And with this, an amaretto would be nice with a little bit of almond extract to reinforce. It would be a nice, very almond chocolate flavor. And you can also fold in some nuts. Some hazelnuts would be a really good idea. And, you know, even some finely ground almonds. So definitely have fun with the Sarah Bernhardt cookie. Maybe make it the way we're making it today first, and then kind of change it up with some different flavors. Okay, so I can feel on the bottom here that this is cooling off nicely. We're going to go ahead and put our butter in just a minute. So like I said, you know, if you're in a hurry or if your kitchen's a little warm, you can put a little bowl of ice under here. That's going to help it cool. But it cools off quickly when you turn up the speed a little bit with the whisk in there. And as far as the cocoa powder, I put in maybe 2 tablespoons. You can go ahead and put a little bit more in if you'd like it more chocolatey, and you can even make it without the cocoa powder if you just wanted to make a vanilla buttercream. Okay, so this is looking good. And like I said, with this, with these buttercreams, the Swiss and the French like I'm making today, if you have any separation, it's going to come together. So let's go ahead and add our butter a little bit at a time. Okay. Be careful when you're adding things like this that you're dropping them in over the rim of the bowl, so you're not getting your fingers anywhere close to that whisk. Just kind of drop it in from a distance. You can kind of throw it in a little bit if you need to. We're going to let this catch up a little bit. And like I said, if it once in a while you're just going to see a little separation, it'll come together. I have a little bit of coolness in the center of my sticks of butter, so that may cause us to have a little bit of separation, but they'll come together. Okay, any questions on the French buttercream? Or have you made it before? Are you going to try it now?
I've made it before, and I like that you can use the egg yolks because I predominantly make Swiss meringue, and I always have a hard time finding a spot to use the egg yolks, and so I make it.
Yeah, it's a nice flavor. It's got a nice flavor to it. And the egg yolks, they just make it so rich. And what's nice too is you're going to use the egg white in the macaroon portion of the cookies, so you'll have some use for your egg yolks as well. Okay, so we got a little separation here. I think my butter was a little too cool, but we're just going to whisk this and it'll come together. It's going to take a little bit, but it will come together. Okay, it's looking pretty good. We'll be scraping it down before we're done. Yeah, it feels a little cool. I think my butter got a little bit too cool here, but like I said, it's, you know, you kind of got to let it work on its own and come back together. Okay, we have a question. We have a question on storing the cookies. They're going to be stored in the refrigerator because we're using this French buttercream that has a nice egg yolks in it. So it's definitely not something that you can store at room temperature. So store them in the refrigerator. And you're not going to want to make these too far in advance, maybe a day or maybe two, because the cookie can get soggy depending on your refrigerator and you know how moist the air is, your environment, what climate you're living in. Always keep in mind if you're in a humid climate, it's going to be a lot different than it would be like if someone was living up north in the winter with the dryness. So our buttercream is looking great. It was, like I said, it separated a little bit. Our butter was a little cool, but it came together nicely. So don't worry if you see that, especially with the Swiss buttercream too. Ideally, it's better if it doesn't happen, but it will come together for you. It's just a temperature thing. Okay, so this looks great. We're going to go ahead and pull it off, and then we are going to talk about finishing off our Sarah Bernhardt cookie. Okay, so does anyone have any questions now that I have the mixer off? It's not so noisy. Okay, so this buttercream looks great. It's really rich and easy to work with, and definitely anything made with the French buttercream, you're going to want to store it in the refrigerator. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pipe the buttercream on the cookie. I'm just using a plain tube. I like to use a plain tube. You can use a star tube. You can use a French star tube that has those nice fine little grooves in it. So really, it's whatever you like, how you would like to finish off your Sarah Bernhardt cookies. So nextly, we are going to go ahead and pipe this buttercream onto the cookie. Okay, so I've got some cookies that I made earlier. And they are a nice golden brown color. And as you can see, this cookie doesn't spread a lot. It's still pretty highly mounded. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn these upside down, and this is how we fill the cookie. With these macaroons, especially the ones that you're making with the almond paste, let them cool before you take them off the tray. Otherwise, you're going to have the bottom sticking a little bit. And what you can do is you can kind of bend your parchment up a little bit and pull it off. So let it cool off all the way, because you're not going to want to do anything with these when they're warm anyway, because the buttercream will just melt. So nextly, we are just going to be piping our buttercream on the cookie. And I like to pipe it up in a mound. Like I said, I'm using the plain tube, and you can use star tube, whatever you like. But you're going to want to mound this up. You can even spoon it on, however you like. But it should be a pretty good size mound. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put these in the freezer. And then we are going to be dipping them in some chocolate. So this is the filled Sarah Bernhardt cookie, ready to be finished. Does anyone have any questions? So repeats the process a little bit with the macaroon mix and then making the buttercream, but pretty simple to do, and it looks, to me, it looks very classic and exquisite, and I'm sure that you'll be impressing all your friends and family. So I'm going to set these aside, and I've got the chocolate melted, and we have some cookies in the freezer that I made earlier, and we're going to be dipping them. You're going to want those set in the freezer for about an hour. Okay. So we've got just some semi-sweet chocolate that I melted earlier. And I kind of just had it on the pot with the warm water staying nice and fluid-like for us. What I did is I added a little bit of shortening to this. And this is going to help with dipping the cookie. And it's also going to be a nicer texture when you bite into these cold. And like I said earlier, we talked about storing the cookie, and it's going to be at not at room temperature, but in the refrigerator. So the chocolate would get really hard in the refrigerator, and then when you bite into it, it's not necessarily bad. It's just going to kind of crack. But having the shortening in here is going to make it a little bit softer when you bite into it. Not quite ganache-like, but not very cracky and breaky. And it's also going to help with the dipping of the cookie too. So like I said, after you put your buttercream on these cookies, put them in the freezer for a good hour and let them set up really well. And especially if your kitchen is warm, you're going to maybe take out a small amount at a time. If you have 30 of these and it's 95 that day in your kitchen, by the time you're done melting, by the time you're done dipping 10 of them, they could very well be on their way to melting. So take out, maybe 10 at a time if your kitchen's really hot. It's kind of warm in here. That's why I just have a few that I made, and we're going to go ahead and finish these. And does anyone have any questions? Okay, so here they are. I just, I piped them earlier with my plain tube. We have the cookie upside down. And that's just a classic way to do this. So what you're going to do is you're just going to carefully dip this in your chocolate. Make sure that your chocolate is deep enough so this can go all the way in. Otherwise, it's going to hit the bottom of the bowl. So if you're doing a small amount, then use a little bit deeper bowl. So just kind of, dip it in there, get it on the cookie, and kind of let it run off a little bit. And it is going to start setting as soon as you dip it because it's so cold. But these are super easy to make, and it's a nice, composed cookie. Popular around Christmas time, but also good every time of year, any time of year. Okay, so now that's pretty easy to do, isn't it? So that's where our freezer comes in handy in baking. So, just carefully dip these in. If you get your fingers in here a little bit like I am, make sure that you wipe them off in between dips, and then you won't get any little chocolate fingerprints on your cookies. So they're beautiful. They're exquisite. And this is a classic dessert. And, this was a long time ago that this was made in her name. So it just has kind of like that old world elegance to it. That's the way I look at it. And like I said, as you can see, these are setting up nicely on the tray. You can finish these with sprinkles if you like, or even some chopped nuts, or even, you know, chocolate chip, a white chocolate chip, whatever you like. But I just think they are exquisite. They're beautiful. So let me know if you have any questions on the Sarah Bernhardt cookie. We're going to be wrapping up. I'm going to go ahead and put these on a plate with some fruit and berries, and they will be ready to be eaten. So definitely try these cookies, and I'm sure you'll be impressing your friends and family. So before we go, I'm going to be plating this, but I'd really like to know, has anyone had the Sarah Bernhardt cookie, or has anyone made the Sarah Bernhardt cookie? Have you had it at a friend's house or maybe a restaurant? Or are you going to be the first one to make it? Maybe. That'd be perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead and put a few oranges on here on our plate. Got a little paring knife here. Okay, so these look beautiful. You could even put these in maybe a little like silver cup, a little gold cup for the holiday. That would look pretty cute too. And you can present them, you know, as you would any pastry. So we're just going to put a few oranges on our plate for a little bit of color here, maybe some berries. And then we are going to be saying our goodbyes. But let me know how you're doing with your Sarah Bernhardt cookies. I'd really love to hear if you make them, and maybe what flavors you make them in. And you could probably even, you know, change up the size a little bit too, and the shape. Typically this cookie is, you know, it's made round as we're showing it, but you could probably make it long for something a little bit different too, kind of change it up a little bit. But like I said earlier, these are, you know, they're setting up because they were in the freezer, so they're pretty much ready to be served almost right after you dip them. Store them in the in the refrigerator like we talked about, and definitely try some different flavors and textures with your Sarah Bernhardt cookies. And thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you next week.